Just a few weeks after being dealt, Dylan Cozens is back in Buffalo. How well has it really gone for him in Ottawa through 8 games? Josh Norris's end of the story, his status for tonight, and where we sit just a couple of weeks after a big trade the two teams within the same division made. We'll talk about it coming up ahead of Sabres and Senators here on the Locked On Sabres podcast.
You're Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody, and welcome into a Tuesday edition of the Locked On Sabres podcast, and thanks for making us your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including checking us out on our YouTube channel where you can watch the show. Be sure to like and subscribe us there. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is presented by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Sneaky Joe DiBiase here on a game day, the Sabres and the Senators. We'll talk about the matchup. More so, we will talk about the big trade that these two teams made just a couple of weeks ago and the very early returns on that deal. Ottawa probably feeling great about it. Here in Buffalo, teetering on the edge of nervousness and cautiousness, patience, I should say, as Josh Norris continues to deal with the injury that he had carried over from Ottawa. So we'll get to all of that today on the Locked On Sabres podcast. If you would like to become a part of our Locked On Sabres text club for all the latest on lineup notes and, of course, big picture stuff. We were talking in there yesterday about the Jarmo Kekalainen social media thing, how he's poking around on Sabres Twitter. All that is available to you. If you would like to become a subscriber, you could sign up by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSabres, and then you can hit us up with a text, comment, or a question thereafter. Tonight, we'll get to the matchup, but the Sabres are at home, and it's Dylan Cozens returning to Buffalo, but not Josh Norris playing against his former team. Lindy Ruff already given the lowdown that Norris is not going to play against his former team. Norris did speak with the media after the fact, and he did clarify that it is the same injury that he had been dealing with that had been nagging him in Ottawa throughout this year. Sounds like he had kind of been playing through it, re-aggravated it in his third game with the Sabres, and he has not been on the ice since. Now, what Norris said is that he could push through, but that they want to be smart with it. And that, to me, makes sense. The idea that he would have played tonight would have been for appearances only. It would have been to avoid the blowback, if you even want to call it, from Canada media, especially of, oh, look, Josh Norris already missing games. And they're right to point that out. But if you're Norris or you're the Sabres, you don't play him just to avoid that. You don't play him in the name of, see, he is playing. He is healthy. Nothing to worry about. You don't risk anything for PR or whatever. You sit him, you make sure he's healthy before he gets back, because that is the ultimate risk with Josh Norris and who they picked up in this trade. So let's get to the trade, though, a couple of weeks later, and really dive in on what's happened in Ottawa with Cozens since he left the Buffalo Sabres. Because to say it's gone well is a bit of an understatement for Dylan Cozens. He has absolutely lived up to any expectation that the Senators and their fans would have had for him when they acquired him. He is performing. He is absolutely throwing his body around. He is playing fast. He is scoring goals. He's setting people up. It's all kind of coming together for him. Now, remember, though, this is all happening within an 8-game sample size. And that is why I wouldn't even say you have to panic about it. Do you even care is a question in the first place, because we pretty much saw for 2 years that this was not going to happen in Buffalo, what you're seeing from Dylan Cozens right now. He needed a change of scenery, and he needed a different system to play in. For me, has always been important here, that the game got too slow for him. He is a player that, in my opinion, watching him over the years with the Buffalo Sabres, He is a player that plays better on instinct. He plays better when the game is fast, when it is up and down the ice, when you are in a system like Don Granato had, which doesn't really penalize you for making mistakes. Almost a willingness to make mistakes. Go ahead, but play fast, play loose, play instinctual. Don't, be too conservative. And I think Cozens, because of his speed and his offensive ability, performed well in those circumstances. And then when the Sabres wanted to slow the game down, buckle things down, he kind of got lost in that shuffle. I don't believe that Dylan Cozens is a great thinker on the ice. I'm not sure that matters if you have him in the right system, and maybe you're seeing a little of that in Ottawa. I'm actually not sure the exact type of system they play. I just know from experience here in Buffalo, that's kind of how it went. When the game got slowed down, he became unable to produce the same amount of offense that he did when the game was up and down the ice, trading chances. Don't worry about your defensive mistakes. Just go, 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 go. And that was the year that Dylan Cozens had his best play. So here we go, though, with a couple of things that have been happening in Ottawa. And you might ask yourself, just why? Why is Dylan Cozens, after all this time in Buffalo, why is it going so much better in Ottawa? And a little of that, I think, is quality of line mate. He is not playing on the top line all the time up in Ottawa. His most common line mate so far in Ottawa has been Drake Batherson and then David Perron after that. So that's line 2, second line center, not the Brady Tkachuk line, but Drake Batherson, who's been a very good player for a few years, and then David Perron, a longtime veteran winger, the type that Cozens really never played with. Perron, a guy that still has some ability at his age. And in Ottawa, 82 minutes with Batherson, 72 minutes with Perron. The next closest forward at 5-on-5 is Matthew Highmore at 6 minutes. So it's those two. It's Batherson and it's Perron. And to compare that with who he played the most with in Buffalo, Jack Quinn, by a lot, was his most common line mate. The other guy that is completely lost in Buffalo right now. And then number 2 is Zach Benson, who I love, the numbers love, but he's 19 years old. And think of how I just described Cozens and how it went here in Buffalo. Is there a more polar opposite type of player as a forward from Dylan Cozens than Zach Benson? Benson doesn't have the foot speed right now. In fact, by NHL Edge numbers, he still is one of the slowest players in the NHL. Benson is a thinker. Benson is a hockey IQ guy, understands spacing, likes to slow the game down a lot. And to me, that doesn't really mesh well with Dylan Cozens' style. That's the guy he played the second most minutes with, after the first guy who has been one of the worst Sabre forwards on the year. So that, to me, is a factor here. It is a factor as to why you're seeing better results in Ottawa. But it's definitely more about he got thrust into a playoff race. I think that's more of it. I think it's more about the adrenaline of being traded, getting to a new team, the energy that you get when you go to a full building night after night that's playing for a playoff spot, and feeding off that energy. I think that could absolutely do something to a player. Cozens, I just think, kind of didn't have it anymore on that front. And I think that was Sabre fans obviously had enough and could tell that the last game he played for the Buffalo Sabres, when he did not stand up for his captain, who was basically fending off 2 opponents at the same time, and he stood there and did absolutely nothing. So to me, it's more about that. It's more about being thrust into a playoff spot, as Ottawa at the moment is 5 points up on a playoff spot. They actually are 6 points back of the 3rd spot in the Atlantic. That's not completely dead. They kind of need a miracle for it, but everything's going great there. So I think that's more of what it is about. Now, how different really is it for Cozens in Ottawa? Here are some of the advanced numbers on that, because if you look at just the straight up numbers, obviously they're going to look really good. 8 games played in Ottawa this year. He's got 3 goals and 4 assists, 7 points compared to his 31 points in 61 games for the Sabres. I mean, you could just tell right there that it's better. But let's look at some of the advanced numbers and look at how he's doing per minute of ice time, per 60 minutes of ice time in Ottawa versus in Buffalo. If you're watching along on YouTube, got the numbers up there for you, for the listeners, reading them off here. Goals per 60 minutes. Per 60 minutes of ice time. 0.6 in Buffalo, 1.4 in Ottawa, more than double. Again, very limited sample size, but this is how well it's gone so far. Points per 60 minutes, 1.7 in Buffalo, 3.3 in Ottawa. Expected goals for percentage, 45.9% in Buffalo, 49.5% in Ottawa. Goals for percentage. What percentage of the goals at 5-on-5 are actually scored when you're on the ice? In Buffalo, it was 49%. In Ottawa, it is 63%. The only number you can really find where the number is higher for Cozens in Buffalo this year than it was for him in Ottawa is shot attempts. Corsi for percentage, 50.6% in Buffalo, 49.3% in Ottawa. But that could just be shots from the wall, right? And that actually is what that would imply. The fact that he has a higher expected goals for number in Ottawa, but a higher shot attempt number in Buffalo would imply that the quality of those shots in Buffalo weren't really there. So he is playing better. He's not getting lucky. He is playing better. The results show themselves on the ice, and it might continue. I don't think it'll continue at this rate, but I think you're going to see him perform better until the playoffs show up. And then I don't really know because, again, the way I think of Cozens, as I just kind of laid out, like slowing the game down isn't necessarily great for him. That is kind of what the playoffs are. So I don't know. He is a player that likes to throw his body around when he's energized. He's been doing that for Ottawa. He had 9 hits in a game a couple of nights ago or something like that. Or maybe it was 9 hits in total. But he's doing that. That would work well in the playoffs. But the playoffs is when everything gets physical. Everything gets dragged down in the muck. No penalties are being called. And I'm very curious to see how Cozens does in that environment. Because on the surface, I don't think he'll do well in that. But he's already done well in Ottawa, better than I would have thought he would have, and we'll see if that continues. When we come back, the Sabres end of things, where that stands at the moment, and why you have to give the advantage to Ottawa in the trade at this moment in time. Very early results. We really won't know whether this is a win for the Sabres for multiple years. But for now, early returns are Ottawa. Part of the reason, what's happened with Josh Norris. Want to get into Norris a little bit, kind of the big picture with him. And then, if you like Cozens' anytime goal tonight, by the way, the odds are going down. So you better get on that quick. We'll have that for you in our preview of the game coming a little bit later here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast is presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. As I mentioned, when we look at some of the parlays and such for later for Buffalo, Ottawa, we will be looking at FanDuel Sportsbook. At this very moment, your updated stock on this, plus 240 for a Dylan Cozens anytime goal tonight. March Madness is here. FanDuel giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who is cutting down the net. With tournament games happening almost every day, starting up again on Thursday, there is always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app is simple to use. When you win, you get paid instantly. There is no waiting around. So just visit FanDuel.com today. Get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. Again, at FanDuel.com. Today's episode of Locked On Sabres is also presented by Wonderful Pistachios. If you are looking for a snack that is both delicious and nutritious, Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios, one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, but gives you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they are packed with fiber and those better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. I like the no shells variety. That's what I've got. I just throw them in my golf bag. I'm always ready to go if I'm going to the simulator or out on the course as the weather's getting a little nicer. Love the grab and go ease of it. But if you like that crack of the opening of the shell, it's like a snack meditation that's available to you as well. So whether you're running into a meeting or dropping off the kids, Wonderful Pistachios are the snack that works as hard as you do. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. We talked a lot about Dylan Cozens in segment 1 and how much better it is going for him, which it absolutely is. Well, let's get to how it's gone for Josh Norris in Buffalo. And there's not really a lot to go on. It's only 3 games of sample size. It is more about the injury status and what that is going to be for him going forward. Now, if you want the numbers on it, again, only being in 3 games of sample for Josh Norris. Josh Norris on the year is right now looking at 1 goal, 1 assist in the 3 games that he has played. His Corsi for percentage, a little bit better than it was in Ottawa. 48% here in 3 games, 47 in Ottawa. Expected goals for percentage, 46.7 here, 46.0 in Ottawa. So in the 3 games he played, some of the advanced numbers look about the same. We saw the speed on display. He set up a Tage Thompson goal. We have seen a little bit of the shot. That's the one thing we haven't got to see a lot of yet. I'm hopeful that we get to see him on the ice again before the end of the year, but it's all about getting him healthy. It's all about the health. It's all about getting him further and further removed from those shoulder surgeries that he has had, the latest of which was in March of 2024. So it's been 1 full calendar year since the last of his shoulder surgeries. And to me, I'd like to believe in theory that the further and further away he gets from that, it's going to be better and better for him. That doesn't have to be the case, though, right? It could be a degenerative thing that is nagging him throughout his entire career. You really hope that that is not the case. That's the risk that the Sabres assumed when they took on Josh Norris as an asset, especially somebody that's got so many years remaining on his contract. But I think the plans for Norris are pretty big. I think they're bigger than they would have been for Dylan Cozens if Cozens were still here, and I think they're bigger than what they are for Cozens in Ottawa right now. That's actually a good thing for Cozens, right? Cozens is not going to Ottawa to be their number 1 center. Tim Stützle is their number 1 center and will be for a very long time. Cozens is the second-line center, and that's what, in theory, he was going to be here. Even when this year Thompson gets moved to the wing, it's Kulich that's playing at number 1 center, not Dylan Cozens. So if that's going to hold, Thompson on the wing, what I think you saw from very early actions from the Sabres and the way they're going to incorporate Norris is I think he's going to be their number 1 center next year. I think that's at least what they want. I think that's what they are. They're going to plan on that, and they're going to be ready with a plan B because of the injuries. But I bet they come out next year with Josh Norris centering line 1. I think Thompson remains on the wing, and they go Norris, number 1 center, Kulich, number 2 center, McLeod, number 3 center. That's how I see their future being, at least for next year. And that means that the Sabres see a bigger role for Norris if he could stay on the ice than what they had for Dylan Cozens. And that's where I'm at, too. Because if you remember, my original thoughts on that trade were Norris is just a little bit better in every category than Cozens is. He's a little bit better of a skater. He's a little bit thicker, a little bit more, I would say, 6'2" even, and size-wise, they're pretty similar. He is a better shot. The one area where he's a lot better is the power play. That's another category where we have not really got to see Josh Norris yet. We have not seen much of him at all on the power play. In fact, in the 3 games, how many minutes are we? 6 minutes. We were at 6 minutes of power play time for Josh Norris so far. That's it. So it's going to be a little bit before we could see a big sample size of Norris. I am still optimistic, though, that this trade at the end of the day is going to look favorably on the Buffalo Sabres. That we're going to look back on it as a win. I think that it's going to get there, but he's got to stay on the ice. And I think the Sabres would be in their best interest to play it as conservative as possible from here to the end of the year. If there is any pain, if there is anything sore, then you hold them out because you're playing for nothing right now other than experimenting with some things from next year. So I'm still optimistic about the Norris side of the trade, but you have to admit that Ottawa's got to be feeling pretty good about the deal they made. Think about it. For them, why it's a win for them is because for the Sabres, this was a long-term move. And really, when you think about this trade, it is kind of different for the two sides. For the Sabres, it's a long-term trade. They were out of the playoff race. This is about shaking up the core and changing out your core. For Ottawa, it's not as much even about that as it is about this year. They are ready to go. They're going to the postseason. And they clearly believe that Cozens was more reliable than Norris. And they were right. Norris, they would have known was dealing with a nagging injury and maybe thought they couldn't count on him to be healthy for the postseason. So let's swap him out for a guy that is healthy, that we know will be out on the ice. The short term was more valuable to Ottawa in this trade than Buffalo, which is why for the long term, I'm still pretty optimistic for the Sabres end of things. When we come back, we'll look at the matchup a little bit. Is Cozens to score tonight? A sucker's bet? Get to that when we come back here in the Locked On Sabres podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Sabres is presented by Game Time. Hey, if you want to go to the game tonight, Game Time is the place to look. There is nothing like watching all of these games live. Sound of the puck hitting the boards and, you know, the skates on the ice are awesome. Game Time makes getting tickets even easier to go to these games. Game Time's new feature, Game Time Picks, filters out all the fluff. It only shows you the best deals on great seats. It's the best user experience for getting right to the best deals that you want to see, not having to dig through everything. So you're not going to be wasting time scrolling through thousands and thousands of tickets. Just check the Game Time app. There's some amazing deals for tonight's games and big matchups. Game Time Picks even highlights super deals, which gives you the best bang for your buck. And you get the view from your seat before you buy. You know what you'll be looking at, the angle of it. You want to be above the glass, below the glass. You want to be along the blue line. You want to be behind the net. All that for you as well. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, back here on Locked On Sabres. The Sabres are a underdog at home tonight. No surprise, they are playing a very good Senators team, a team that I picked to make the playoffs this year. In my opinion, that was a good roster over the last couple of years that was missing one thing and one thing only, and that was goaltending. I think they have struggled a lot. Matt Murray, when he was the plan a couple of years ago for them in goal, and then Jonas Korpisalo, have just never thought that was going to work for them in net, and it didn't. It really sunk them over the last couple of years. But Stützle is a great player, and Brady Tkachuk, and I mean, Jake Sanderson. I love Jake Sanderson as a player. I really like a lot of their players. They have supplemented with good veterans. Claude Giroux, of course, a couple of years ago. They just needed the goalie. And they got Linus Ullmark. And the moment I saw Linus Ullmark get traded to that team, I thought that's going to be a playoff team. Because that was their hole. They just went out and got the guy who won the Vezina just a couple of years ago, has been a rock-solid starting goalie going all the way back to his days in Buffalo. In fact, what's amazing is this year, by save percentage at least, that's not the most exact way to do this, this is Linus Ullmark's out of 10 NHL seasons, even including the games where he played 1 or 4 games. This is his second worst save percentage of his career at a .908, and it's still an upgrade for Ottawa. And he's played very well as of late. A couple of stinkers in there against Montreal and Colorado, but the last month, Ullmark's been awesome. And I think he is a type of goalie that, of course, could get hot when the playoffs show up. And I would not be surprised right now. I might even want to pick it. It's going to depend on matchup. I might end up picking Ottawa to win the first round. If the season ended today, the Senators would be playing Florida in the first round. I don't necessarily love that matchup. But if they get like Toronto or Tampa, Toronto 2 points back of Florida, Tampa 4 points back. If they get one of those two teams, I could definitely see them winning. I think Florida, though, I would want to pick Florida. Kachuk versus Kachuk would be pretty cool, though, in the first round. If they're to fall behind Montreal for that second wildcard spot, Montreal is on a heater lately. They're only 4 points back of Ottawa. If Montreal catches Ottawa, then I would pick Ottawa to beat Washington. Really, I feel like the only team I definitely wouldn't pick them to beat is Florida. So I really like what's going on in Ottawa. You look at some of their numbers on the year, expected goals for percentage for the Senators. They're hanging around actually 20th on the year, which is actually a little bit surprising to me. Their other numbers, 17th when it comes to Corsi for percentage. Scoring chances, they're a little bit higher. So, all right, yeah, goaltending, I guess, has been really a big savior. Those numbers not as good as I thought they would have been, but been very impressed by a lot of their individuals on the year. And we'll see if Cozens can keep it up. For tonight's game, Dylan Cozens, anytime goal, plus 240. I'm not touching it. The odds are shooting up. They actually were lower now than they were this morning. Everyone seems to be betting it. I understand why. And what's dangerous about that, avoiding that, is empty net situations. They're going to work to get Cozens a goal if it comes to that. And that's how you can kind of get a cheap cover on it. For me, I'm more interested in going for a little bit lower on the odds for that. I'm going to go with Ryan McLeod at plus 380 to score a goal in this game. That's way down the list. Plus 380 for McLeod. He's getting a lot of ice time lately. He's getting power play time, and he's been playing awesome. So I'm just sticking with the Ryan McLeod heater right now, and I'm going with him to score a goal at plus 380. The Sabres are plus 130 to win tonight. Would not pick them to win, but we'll see. All right. Enjoy the game tonight. Cozens returning, and we will talk to you tomorrow after it is all over here in the Locked On Sabres podcast. Be sure to check out Locked On NHL for all your league-wide NHL action. You can find them wherever you get your podcasts. And we'll talk to you tomorrow here in the Locked On Sabres podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.